kickoff of the Leadership to Go series. I am Katie Weaver, and with me here today is also Sharon Henderson. We are with the Montana State University Community Vitality Program. This is a 6 series leadership training, so there'll be 5 more opportunities after this morning. We are going to have 20 minutes of presentation from our guest today, and then we'll have time at the end, 10 minutes for some questions. So you're welcome to put stuff in the chat, but we won't be having those questions until the very end. We are recording, and we're going to be making these available on MSU Extension's YouTube channel in the future. So just so you are fully aware, and Sharon is going to go ahead and hit that record button. So thank you again for being here. I'm thrilled to introduce Pat Hughes, our first presenter of this series. We're very excited to have her join us and kick this off. Pat is the co-founder and author of Gracious Space. She's based out of Seattle, Washington, and is the owner of Trillium Leadership Consulting. If you've been around Pat, or you'll get a chance today if you haven't, she is a passionate facilitator. She's a coach, a leadership educator, and a change management consultant. And we're so excited for her to be here this morning and talk to us about Gracious Space. So Pat, thank you for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Hi, everybody. Katie, can you hear me okay? All right. Well, congratulations on this series, and I'm so thrilled to be part of it. What a wonderful way to start my day. So I'm going to share with you a couple of slides, a couple of questions to think about, and just give a very short overview of Gracious Space. And the purpose here today is to think about how can Gracious Space help you? That is the goal. So let us proceed. So there's me, and here's me again. And Katie covered most of it, most of the professional side. There are 3 books of Gracious Space. There's the first book that Bill and I wrote on the basic concepts of Gracious Space that I'll be covering today. There's a second book called Courageous Collaboration with Gracious Space. And I do have a training on that coming up starting at the end of the month. It's a 4-part exploration into this topic, and you can select to come to 1 or all 4 or 2 or 3. And then I'm really excited because this year I'm coming out with a new book that pairs Gracious Space with equity, inclusion, and belonging. So that should happen this summer. And then there'll be another roundtable 4-part series on that in the fall. The other fun things about me are that in addition to working hard, which I do, I play hard. And so I am right now in the middle of my skate skiing season. I also love to garden. So that's actually happening also. I went skiing on Sunday and I came home and I saw crocuses in my yard. So it's a pretty fun time to be in Seattle. All right, let's dive in. I'm going to ask you to take a look at these pictures and think about which image for you most represents a gracious space this morning, without even knowing, if you're just hearing the term for the first time, without even knowing what I think it is. Just sit with these photos for a minute, and I'm going to ask you to just start posting in the chat the letter that corresponds to the image. We got several who are going for the coffee and the book. I think that's awesome. Several going for sleeping puppy on the couch. Yeah. Couple of you going for the group of friends around food. Food is a big part of Gracious Space. It's like humans have been gathering around food since dirt, right? Several of you going for the children with toys. Children are such a great example of Gracious Space because they talk frankly and they are very open, and they're constantly learning, right? So those are a couple of qualities of Gracious Space. The water with the bridge, Several of you choosing those, both maybe because of the calm, the nature, but maybe also the symbolism of bridging. Bridging takes us from one place to another, or from one perspective to another, what we know now and what we might know later. Okay, a couple of you have chosen, I chose this cow for you. I love that cow. It's what you do. It's your livelihoods, and why you get up in the morning is to be good Montanans. And I didn't say in the introduction, but I love Montana. I've been there like 20 times, and oh gosh, all over too. So yay for Montana. Several have chosen the canoe, like just with one other person on a quiet morning with no ripples and just gliding. Yeah, and the mountain and the ocean, right? So I think what we're learning here is that gracious space can actually happen anywhere. It doesn't have to happen in one place, like, well, it has to happen in a meeting or it has to happen at church. It can happen anywhere. A conversation on the sidewalk, in line at the grocery store, behind the wheel of your car, with your children, with your friends, your significant others. So let's keep that in mind as we think about where you want to apply gracious space, because it can absolutely go anywhere. And some of the qualities of gracious space, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but there are many qualities that can create what we're calling a gracious space. So let's dive in a little bit further. Here's the official definition, and we're going to quickly unpack each of these 4 elements. Gracious space is a spirit. That means kind of how we show up. A setting, a physical setting that we just explored a little bit about that, where we invite difference and learn in public. And this is the work of the Center for Ethical Leadership, where I worked for almost 10 years and got the privilege of developing and writing down all of what we learned about gracious space. It actually started out as a term, just like that. And then I developed it into a curriculum, which we tested over time, kept asking questions about, what does it mean? How does it show up? What are the challenges? And then put all that down in the book. And there is a TED Talk that we will share the link for at the end. So if you want to take it a little bit more slowly, it'll be similar to this outline. All right. A couple things that I want to say about the model is that it has a bias. It has a bias for collaboration. So that means that gracious space is best matched with groups and organizations that want to work together. The tagline of the book is a practical guide for working better together. So know that it has a bias toward collaboration. And it is one way to create psychological safety in groups. Psychological safety essentially means that you feel safe enough to show up with authenticity and speak up, even if it's not a popular opinion. Some people mistake gracious space for polite space. And actually, gracious space is the best container for when you have difference or conflict. So when we talk about spirit, this essentially means how we show up, how I show up, like what are my qualities that I'm bringing with me when I walk into the room? What are my talents? What is my best self? We all have days when we feel like, oh, I shouldn't have said that thing, or I was a bit cranky, and I wish I had been different, not necessarily done things differently, but this is the part of gracious space that is about being. And for me, this is a practice. I get up in the morning and I think about, how do I want to be? What qualities do I want to bring into my day? Those qualities are contagious. People can tell. They can tell if we're having a good day or a hard day. I know I wear my emotions on my face. I'm a pretty obvious person when I'm happy or when I'm not happy. And so this is about saying, how do I want to show up, both as myself and then also as a group? A group can say, how do we want to work together? What are the norms? What are our agreements? What are some patterns? Patterns just exist everywhere. Whenever you have two or more people, patterns start to form. And that can be anything like, do we start on time? Do we have an agenda? Who speaks? Who doesn't speak? Who sits next to who? Can we bring up hard topics or should we not? Can I be vulnerable or will that be seen as weakness? All of these things make up the spirit of a group. If you think about, walking into a Home Depot, that has a spirit to it. That whole enterprise has a spirit versus walking into your favorite coffee shop. Very different. So thinking about those aspects and how we want to bring those into the day. And of course, the spirit of the work is the bigger purpose that we are engaged in our work or our lives. So the second element is setting. We started off with this a little bit. It is the physical environment that supports the work or where the work takes place. I call it coffee, snacks, and beyond. And the idea is that we want our physical space to help what we're doing, not to get in our way. So for example, if you have a meeting or an engagement where you want people talking to each other, we put them at tables, right? We're round tables where they can face each other and have conversations, as opposed to a lecture format where it's really hard to mingle. The setting also includes accessibility. Is it physically accessible? Is it accessible to those with any kind of disability? Do you have the right materials? Have you chosen a location that is also accessible and maybe neutral or representative of the work that you're doing? The setting also is about time. Did we give it enough time? Is now the right time for this conversation? And history. Montana has a rich history in lots of different ways. And when you walk into buildings or communities, they have history. And that, as this quote says, is we're pressed upon this history. And so why not make that part of our story? And it could be a difficult history. It could be a positive history. Either way, it matters. And so the setting asks us to reflect on each of these things and make changes in our physical space, add things, bring things to make the setting more supportive. So something to think about. Also, as you look around your office and think about, is this setting helpful to you? So the third element of gracious space is inviting difference. And this is the part I find like this is the crux move. It's often the most difficult for folks because we live in our own heads a lot. We have expectations of how the world should work that aren't always clear to us. They're unconscious sometimes. And until we bump into somebody else who does things differently, who thinks differently, who has different expectations, different ways of seeing or different ways of communicating. And that's when we know it's like, oh. And so that right there can be a response when you are faced with difference. Sometimes, unfortunately, often humans tend to see difference as less than or something that we need to get rid of. And what I want to do is encourage us to learn from difference, to be open to difference, because we can't know everything. And if we want to be better and make better decisions and see the world more widely, we need to invite difference. And this can be, a person, somebody from a different team or department or community. It can also be a perspective. It's not always a person. In fact, it's dangerous to think of the stranger or the difference always as a person. So we think about perspectives, we think about styles. Difference can be feedback. It can be reactions that are unexpected. It can be somebody who feels challenging to us. Absolutely, it's the unknown and it's the future. When we think about the pandemic, that was difference. That was the stranger. That was the unknown. So these are what I call external examples of difference. They are out there and they cause us to say, oh my goodness, did not see that coming. There can also be internal examples of difference because we have stuff going on inside of us all the time. This stuff can be assumptions or biases that we have that we didn't necessarily know that we were carrying until we came into contact with something else. It can be our history, our ancestry, the fact that I'm from New Hampshire originally, rugged individualist. I think that's why I fit well with Montana. That matters, right? I carry that ancestry or my family. It causes me to be a certain way. Feelings that we have, things that trigger us, things that attract us, any kind of discomfort or shame that we carry and that we're not talking about, ways that we're growing and changing, things about ourselves that we're, less than happy about. This is all about the stuff that happens inside of us. And it's a place for learning. The whole idea of inviting difference is so that we can get smarter. I call this part of Gracious Space the business case. Sometimes people say, Gracious Space, oh, it's kind of woo-woo and flippy-floppy and wishy-washy and it's soft. Well, let me ask you this. Are people easy? Are people hard? I think working with people is oftentimes the hardest part of our jobs. And so finding ways to do that better is what Gracious Space is all about. So if we think about on the left, we have this desire. We want to pull together a diverse team so that we can be smarter, so that we have different ideas and perspectives, different experiences. Yay for us, we're diverse. And sometimes we think automatically that's going to help us jump to better outcomes, right? We're going to have more learning. We're going to have more engagement. We'll have better decisions. We'll be more innovative. People will stay because of all of that. But you know what? That does not happen automatically. And in fact, diversity on its own, unmanaged, will cause conflict just because it's difference, right? And so what we need to do is this middle bubble where we have proactive methods that are inclusive, that foster belonging, that engage people, so that you can work through this case and come out the other side smarter, better results. That for me is the bottom line for why we would do something like Gracious Space. And finally, the last element is learning in public. And this is where it all comes together, just like puzzle pieces. We've paid attention to our spirit, both individually and as a group, so that we can explore difference and learn together in a setting that feels supportive to us. And we can get to this place where learning is encouraged, where we think about being a learning community or a learning team, where we listen more and judge less, where we are allowed and there's permission and encouragement to ask questions and take some risks, where we can admit and learn from our mistakes, which might involve an apology or a repair, where we share that learning rather than being ashamed of it, where we're willing to receive feedback and also give feedback, which requires us to be a little bit vulnerable. So learning in public is a very active, it's not something that we sit back and let happen. It is a very active stance where we think about what's possible if we create the space. I want to give a quick example. I worked with a children's hospital a while ago, and they had a practice where when something went wrong, they would gather everybody together, dissect the procedure or the situation, whether it was, an operation or a procedure, not a literal medical procedure, but a process, an HR type of procedure that wasn't working. And they would dissect it and they would ask questions, and they would find out what happened, what went wrong, what could they do better. And people weren't defensive. they just said, we got to learn from this so that we don't do it again, so that we be better, that we can do better. There's lots of different examples. And the key question is, how does your team treat learning? How does your team treat mistakes? That's where it really comes together. So I'm not going to show you that slide yet. So I want to stop and ask you just to pop in the chat something that you're thinking about right now, like what is resonating with you at this moment. That was a very speedy overview of the 4 elements of gracious space, and there are many ways to create it, starting with yourself and how you show up. That can be a practice. You might move the furniture in your office. I had one practitioner in Montana, actually. He's the boss, and he had his desk facing away from the door so that he could see out the window. And so when people came in, literally his back was to them. And he went back after our training and turned the desk just sideways like this so he could still see the window, but he could also see people when they came in. And he said, Pat, you saved my life, which is a bit extreme. But that one physical change created a different feel for people. They felt welcomed. They felt invited. Very different. So it can be something like that. It can be a practice of inclusion to say, whose voices haven't we heard? Who might be missing from this conversation? Who's on the front line? Who's actually doing the work as we in leadership are making decisions that we need to hear from, right? So lots of different ways. You can do the yes and. Yes, Lydia. So let's stop here. We can take some questions. And I'm really appreciating the chats that are coming in. So thank you. Very quick overview. Back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, as Pat encouraged, please share ideas in the chat window. It's always nice to crowdsource from a group like this. We also have a question from Erica. How do you ensure a gracious space in a new or high pressure environment?
How do we ensure a gracious space in a new environment is one question. A high pressure environment's different part. So first of all, I want to say we may not be able to ensure it, but we can invite it. We can create the conditions for it. And I would start with doing like working agreements, group norms. How do we want to be together? If you are in a position of influence, you can make that happen. Because guess what? It's going to happen anyway, with or without you. Group norms will be created in a vacuum, and they may not be the ones you want. And so I would take that by the horns and make it the way you want. Secondly, in a new environment, that's awesome. What a great opportunity to be able to do that. In a high pressure environment, gracious space is often the thing that gets tossed, right? We got to get to task. We got to start out. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And gracious space is a way to stay human, because my belief is that strong relationships get strong results. And you can get really good results by pushing in a high pressure environment, but will they be the best results? So finding time and a way to even just do a quick check-in round or introductions if people are new. I can't tell you how many meetings I've jumped into and people don't know each other, but they get right to task. It's like, well, now I don't know who's here. I don't have any opportunity to connect. So starting with some basics would be my suggestion.
Great. Thanks, Pat. And this is, I think, a similar play on that, and thinking about a group that is not interested in creating a gracious space environment or outright resistant. What are some specific tips you would suggest where people might start?
So I get this question a lot. They say, Pat, how do I do gracious space in a toxic environment? And I bring us back to the very first slide that says gracious space is a collaborative model. It is consensual. And that means we want to be collaborative. And if that's not the gig, you're going to try to force something that people just don't want. And I find that very sad because in those environments, I think they need gracious space more than others. Um, so with that, we have to take a breath and say, in a toxic environment, the reward system is different, right? The rewards are about hoarding power, using fear, um, catching people doing things wrong. If you bring vulnerability to that space, you're going to get squashed. And so, what I would do is start with a bubble. If you have the opportunity to, if you are a manager of a group and you can say, well, in my group, we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to be more kind and open and learning, and you can be the buffer against that global environment. Um, that's one I have a colleague who did that. He worked in a very large higher ed system that he said was very punishing. And so as a manager, he said, in my group, we're going to create a different culture, right? We're talking about culture. So culture change takes a long time. And sometimes it has to come from the top. And the desire for better collaboration and honest collaboration has to be there. And then you can just also start with yourself. It's like, how do I want to be in this culture? How do I want to show up? And keep doing that and keep modeling. And it is contagious. People will say, wow, I just really like to be with you because of the way you are, or I like to work with you because of the way you are. And you choose allies and you choose other people who might be able to influence. And you say, hey, how can we be different in this culture? But that's a long question and that's a big
Hmm.
shift.
Yes. Yeah, the cultural change piece.
Yeah.
Um, I have another question here. I think that's kind of a nice transition there as well. How do we be gracious to ourselves when all our energies are spent ensuring gracious space for everyone else?
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. Um, Oftentimes, folks who resonate with gracious space are in the giving professions, right? We are people who give, who help, who um, counsel or teach or parent or facilitate. We care. And so this has to be, right? It's the oxygen to yourself first before you give it to somebody else. So gracious space is not just something that we do and give to others, we have to give it to ourselves. And so, what are the things in your day that lift you up, that give you a gracious space? Is it taking a walk? Is it getting exercise? Is it chatting with a friend? Because we can work, 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 work. Yesterday I did that. I worked, worked, worked. And in the middle of the day, I went for a walk. I had to drive somewhere and it was beautiful. I was right by Puget Sound. It's like, I'm going to get out of the car and I'm going to take a walk. 10 minutes. It was the best part of my day. And then I could come back and continue working. So you got to give yourself a break. Um, you got to find things in your day and build them in, schedule them in so people don't schedule over it. Kimberly, call me. We can
But
talk more.
I'm also thinking about the pictures you showed at the beginning and how like that connection to one and thinking about, oh, that's what drew me in. How do I maybe create that opportunity for myself in the day, in the week, etc. But just
Yeah,
like letting our body kind of tell us what resonates as something that feels peaceful and gracious to us.
yeah. It's getting
Um,
out of your go, go, go mode and
yeah.
stopping and breathing. Here's a quick hack. Every time I go to the bathroom, I use it as an opportunity to breathe.
Mm.
And I know some of you have kids and dogs that want to follow you in there. I've been there. And yet if you're at work at the office, you got to go to the bathroom. Take it as your quick meditation break, your quick breathing break, come back to center. Who am I? How am I being? Check in. How we doing, Pat? Okay, ready to go, ready to shift.
Yeah.
So that's my quick hack for the day.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Pat. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you for spending this half hour with us. We feel so fortunate to have you share your wisdom as always. Um, Next week, we're gonna be spending some time with Mandy Reed and looking into understanding values and how that has an impact on us as a leader. So thank you all for being here and hope to see you again next week. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you,
Have a great
Katie.
day.
Thank you, Sharon.